Hi everyone, it's great to be here. So, as Sala said, we're here to talk about a project that we undertook at Saatchi Saatchi earlier this year in partnership with Mark from Meet the 85% called What the Fuck is Happening in Britain. Now, first I'll tell you a little bit about the project and why we started it. So at Saatchi Saatchi, we have a simple ambition, which is to make the most influential creative ideas in Britain. And by influential, we mean influential in our clients' companies, creating momentum, influential in our consumers' lives, creating meaning, influential in culture, and influential in our clients' businesses, hopefully creating growth. And we say Britain because modern Britain is a place that's been going through profound change in the last few years. So we then said, well, if we want to be the most influential creative company in modern Britain, we need to understand people better. We need to get deeper, richer insights and understand our consumers like no one else. So we embarked on this project. It actually started with a conversation on the stairs at Saatchi Saatchi about this time last year, when Richard Huntington, who is the Chief Strategy Officer, instigator and author of this book, came up to me and he said, I need to know what the fuck is going on. I don't know what's going on. The clients are asking. I'm quite worried. And he said, at the time, I'm unapologetic about my language and still am. So he said, I know this guy called Mark. He's the guy. Let's go and do this. So we embarked on this project, this adventure together. And it went from that conversation on the stairs to this book. I've got a couple of copies if anyone wants one, or give us an email. So what we'll do is we'll give you a little flavour of it. Just 10, 15 minutes, a run through of some of the highlights and some of the headlines, and talk through some of the insights we found and how we've been applying them to our conversations in advertising and content and creative recently.
Hi everyone, it's very much a whistle-stop tour, and the book that Saatchi Saatchi have written is very good. Alice has a few copies, if you'd like to grab her at the end. And there's obviously much more depth that sits behind these slides. But what did we do at the end of last year? We went on a tour. We went and visited 13 families around the UK. We'll come on to who they are on the next slide. We drove about 3,500 miles. We took thousands of photographs. Every visit was audio recorded and video recorded, as well as conversations with people. We went through their cupboards, we went through their wardrobes, and it's quite revealing when you do that. So we had some good, deep conversations with people, and then what Saatchi Saatchi did is they took some of those themes that emerged from that research, and they pushed it through YouGov to quantify it, and they also held some expert interviews around some of those themes. These are real people. We've had to anonymize them just as per the contracts that they signed, but these are people sourced by research recruiters around the UK. We didn't look for a very specific screener, so we did not screen people based on income. We didn't screen them based on political leaning or political voting intention. The only thing we wanted was a broad range of gender, a broad range of ethnicity, a broad range of age, and everything else was random. We did want somebody who was living with a disability, and we did want somebody that had taken in a Ukrainian family. But beyond that, everything was random. And you can see there's a whole range of people around the country that we visited. We spent about half a day with each of these people, having deep conversations. The discussion guide was very wide. We didn't really focus on brands. We focused on their life at the moment, and we didn't lead them with any particular language. It was very much, how's your life at the moment? What would you be doing today? What are the factors in your life that you're finding joy or stress at the moment? And natural, organic conversations happened because of that. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bleak out there when you get out and you chat to people all around the country, and you'll see we've got some themes that have emerged, and then there's a final slide which is quite dramatic, but you'll see there's some kind of that context that sits behind it. There's an audio clip which I'm going to play you on this slide.
I think the thing that terrifies me is sacrifices. How many sacrifices are we going to have to make before we're okay?
Edward is a professional musician. He's been a professional musician for a number of years. He's lived in London, he's lived in Manchester. He's now had to move out of Manchester for financial reasons, more on the outskirts. And he's having to potentially give up his passion, give up his living of being a professional musician, and start working in the fast food industry, because that's the only way that he can pay his bills. This sense of how many sacrifices do we have to make? We've had years and years of austerity. There's more happening. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight for people when it comes to sacrifices. Gary Stevenson, one of the experts that Saatchi's talked about this. Gary's an ex-trader, and he now runs his own YouTube channel, helps educate people on how the trading environment works. And he paints an even bleaker picture. It's not temporary. It's going to get worse. This thing doesn't get better. It gets worse before it gets better because of the way the system is working. In this sense of there's nothing coming to save us. In the past, it might have been signing up to the EU. In the past, it might have been social housing investment after the Second World War. In the past, it might be North Sea oil and gas, but there's nothing coming to save us at the moment. And Angela, who you'll hear from in a second, talked very eloquently about how she was feeling. You know, we're sinking. There don't seem to be any ropes being swung our way to hold on for a bit of security, to just hold on and say, I can stay in this quagmire for a bit longer because I've got this lifeline. This research was conducted at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, so this was very much at the same time frame as Laura Kuenssberg's State of Chaos, which is very good if you watch it. And this was kind of when we were just coming out of Liz Truss as being Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak coming in to being Prime Minister. But this sense of we're sinking and they're not doing anything about it. They're not here to help us. They're not doing anything for us. This sense of feeling out of control. In our lives, there's so much we can control or influence, but there are lots of things we can't control. Inflation and the economy being a key factor within that. Chatting to Hamid, a GP in Middlesbrough, you know, we talked about the lettuce. I think it was the Daily Star that had the lettuce to see whether the lettuce would last longer than Liz Truss. A conversation with him, the lettuce outlasted her. It just about sums us up. And it's the second part of that sentence that I think is really powerful. It just about sums us up. The fact that as Britain, we've gone from being a heralded country, an example to others, to being a bit of a laughingstock when it comes politically and economically. This sense that instead of us growing and aspiring and moving forwards, we're actually going backwards, the great regression. There was a point earlier in the year where I felt grateful that there were tomatoes on the shelves in the supermarket. You know, we shouldn't be feeling like that in modern Britain, but there's a sense that that's how people are feeling. Harry Wallop talked about that we're at the end of many generations that aspire to be better off than their own parents. We all do it. I'm a parent myself. We want our children to have better lives than us, and we work incredibly hard to strive for a better future for them. When we were visiting people around the UK, you could see them grappling with this. They're working hard, they're working long hours, they're doing their best for their families. But because of factors beyond their control, their children might have worse lives than them. You see that pain written on their face when you're talking to them, that they're grappling with that reality. This sense of division stalking our land, again, isn't new. You could argue it's part of the British DNA to be divided in lots of different ways. But it came through loud and clear when we chatted to people. Matt puts it eloquently here.
I get to a point where I think, do you know what? There's no real future in it anymore in Britain. I don't want to come because Irish haters, Welsh haters, Scottish haters, Northern English hate Southerners. Do you know what I mean?
So this sense of we're divided as the United Kingdom, as Great Britain. I'm clearly a Northerner, I don't hate Southerners, so I just want to say that. And my wife's from London, so I'm definitely not going to say that. But this sense of we are divided, right? And the government amplifying that, the government amplifying that division. This is a quote from Angela.
I know we live in a dog-eat-dog world, but it seems the dog has definitely been let out of the kennels because, you know, people are just, I don't know, they're just not happy. I don't think we're a happy group of human beings at the moment. There just doesn't seem to be any, I don't know, kindness. I think we're lacking on kindness. We're just lacking on togetherness.
These interviews being conducted around the Liz Truss time, 45 days in our history, you can sense that. Prior to that, the government breaking their own rules, the sense of us and them, you know, the dog-eat-dog world, they are the dogs and they're doing what's right for them and there's nobody helping us. And because of that, we're lacking in kindness. It's rubbing off on us as a society to want to look after ourselves and our families beyond looking after other people. We saw the other side as well. We saw people who are very pro-Brexit, people who are more right-wing. You know, and Richard in Maidstone talking about his disappointments. He voted for Brexit. He voted for Brexit because he wanted to stop all the foreigners. You know, but they're still coming. All of the foreigners are still coming. So he's actually disappointed with the fact that they won the vote and they're not delivering on what he thought they were going to deliver for him.
We're coming to a place where I just think, you know, so every now and again I think we need an Armageddon.
Pretty dramatic, right? You have eloquent people talking at depth about we need a war to reset this thing. And this wasn't said flippantly, and Angela wasn't the only person who said this. You know, these are people who were talking about after the Second World War, that's when we had the best social housing in the world, and now we don't. And the fact that it's so ingrained, the us and them, the divisions, you know, the dog eat dog, the political ruling class versus us, that actually maybe we just need a big reset. Maybe we just need to have a war to sort this thing out. So these aren't flippant comments by people. These are people genuinely thinking this might be the only way we can sort this thing out because we're so broken as a nation. So they're just a really quick snapshot of some of the things we found. Quite dramatic imagery, as I'm sure you'll agree. Some really interesting themes. Obviously then Saatchi and Saatchi wanted to make sure that some of those were irrefutable, wanted to make sure that there weren't just themes and views from specific people, but how could we make sure they were representative of the people around the country?
Absolutely. So with these raw themes, we wanted to see if they were more widely held, as Mark says. So we did some YouGov research with some of these themes that Mark's incredible depths of ethnography had uncovered. And we found some quite staggering stats. We found that 73% of us think we're more divided than we were a decade ago as a nation. And we found that 64% of us are less proud of the UK than we were 5 years ago. So quite scary, staggering stats, which framed quite a lot of this research. It's not all grim, though. It is, you can read the book, there's quite a heavy amount of what you've just heard, which is very real. But what we did see and what we saw surfacing also were some lightnesses, some coping strategies, some methods from all of these people, which I'd like to surface as well. We called them three great British virtues. The first is community. Community not in the sense of, you know, our customer base or what we call community, but community in the sense of your neighbours, the people you do activities with, family, the people you share pastimes with, you interact with online, at work or outside of work. What we saw is that community was seen as a protective space around our immediate family that we identify with, which acts as a buffer against the harsh realities of the wider world. And everyone we interviewed had a certain take on what this was for them or who it was for them. Mark's got a really nice example.
What we found was that kind of community is in the eye of the beholder. If you tap into a local community or a community group in your local area or online, you can take out of it as much as you put into it. And there are people doing that, but there are also people who feel excluded from their community, who feel a bit isolated because of it. Chris is a firefighter, and we had a really, really interesting conversation with Chris about how he was grappling with the potentially going on strike and how he didn't want to do that. And he'd taken in a Ukrainian family, and he was part of the local cricket club. And he said the local community made this really special. The local community made us feel so welcome, it made them feel so welcome. And the women in the local community were really good at dealing with the Ukrainians that he was looking after, which was mother and daughter, things that passed him by. Everyone
had a role for community. The second great virtue we found was joy. For everyone, it was their response to crisis in whatever form, big or small, be it from humour in adversity to the small wins that get them through the day, the week, the year. Everyone had their forms and their own coping strategies. And we thought this was quite fascinating, actually, from an advertising and creative point of view specifically.
These small wins are really important to people. You know, we were sat talking to people about starting wars to reset the economy. We sat talking to people about Brexit, about those foreigners coming over. We sat talking to people about the potential of having to go on strike. We were sat there with 2 pairs of socks on because everyone was telling us the heating was on, but they had hoodies and hiking socks on in their own homes because they were saving money. That stuff gets pretty dark and pretty bleak quite quickly. And this participant just said, but you know what? I'm sat here, I'm looking out at my beautiful garden, I'm drinking the coffee brand of my choice, and that makes it okay for a minute. those little moments of joy, those little moments of pleasure that we get peppered throughout our day.
And the third one, which was everywhere, was decency. It ran through every interview, the concept of playing by the rules and being treated the way you'd like to treat others. Angela, Edward, Bethan, everyone said this, and this was something that underpinned even the trickiest moments of their interviews.
I think it's important to me is experiences and being a good person and, you know, being someone that friends and family can rely on and everything.
This is Bethan. This is Bethan in her mid-20s in Newport. She talked in her language of the long, hard slog she has ahead of her. She says she's lucky enough to be a homeowner, but she has 40 or 50 years of a hard slog to pay for that mortgage. She's not looking forward to things as much as she should be in that age group. She's thinking about the hard slog ahead of her. But beyond that, it was very much about, but I want to be a good person. It's really important to me to be a good person to my family and my friends and within my local community.
And her joy was, I've got this mortgage, this is my financial structures, and I've got everything really organised, but my joy is my nails and my lashes. If I don't get them done, that affects my mental health. So that, in her big, scary 40 years of working, she had that thing that was isolated as her personal joy, and that was her choice. So it was fascinating to talk about some of how each person had their own coping strategy or their own methods. So as I say, that was a whistle-stop tour of the book. I'm happy to give anyone a copy or give me an email, but it is quite interesting reading. We found it really useful to talk with our clients. They aren't answers. There aren't 10 checkbox answers of what to do with your brand across the various industries. I'm sorry, we don't have all the answers there, but hopefully it will be useful it's been useful to us in guiding conversation. So we found 3 implications for radio. It's got a question mark at the end of it there. One is we mustn't underestimate the power of community. Radio being such a huge creator and nurturer of community, be it from listeners, be it from people who need the company, be it from Q&As to podcasts to phone-ins to speech radio. There's so much in terms of information or understanding insights which radio plays a huge part in. And our discussion was actually at the agency, do we underservice radio? Do we underservice the ability we have from 30-second spots to radio partnerships in really trying to access the distinctness of different audiences? The second is personal stories matter. You know, how can we listen, as we've done here in this project, but to the 68 million people in Britain? How can we understand those different stories, and how can we use those insights to frame our conversations with them? And the third one was be real, even if it offends. It was the conversation around Richard took up a lot. Richard from Maidstone, who had those views, was very interesting. You may not want to hear them, but what we wanted to do was understand them, understand their motivations, why they're saying that, what that comes from. Because at the end of the day, his cupboards will be full of products from some of the brands that we work for. So it was an effort to tell real stories and understand everyone ambivalently in order to hopefully create some more meaningful stories and points of view for our clients.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Faye. Just got a couple of quick questions that have come in now. Do you think 13 people is a statistically viable representation of the millions of people that live in the UK?
No, it's statistically viable of them, of real people around the UK, but that's why we work with YouGov to make sure that we push those themes through a statistically viable survey set.
Cool. And this one came in as well. It says, that was a moment in time. Do you know how people are feeling now? Are things getting better or are they getting worse?
We're currently in discussions about this year's scope and what it would mean for next year, and hopefully it's a platform that's going to be ongoing. It
would be really exciting to go and look at further dips, same people, different people, and have a look again, especially as the politics shift so quickly, to have a look at what the sentiment is and what the temperature is this winter.
I think this kind of research, it's a mix of qual and quant. So the ethnography, the physical visit side of it pulls up really interesting findings. To then make those findings irrefutable, we then work with partners like YouGov to make sure that they are nationally representative.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark and Alice, thank you. Helen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on.